start this stream. Copy this link. All right, link in the chat. I'll email it to everybody. Mute yourselves here, and I'll see you on YouTube. Test, test. Make sure you guys can hear me, of course. If you can, please put it in the chat that you can hear me so that I know what the deal is. Hear and can hear you. Thank you, Victoria. I really appreciate that. You always say exactly what yeah, that's perfect. Cool. All right. Everybody's here, and whoever liked the video, I love it. It's like there's always like one person liking all these videos. So whoever that is, I appreciate it. You don't have to do that. It's like I'm happy to just not happy. They pay me to teach you, so it's not even it's not even a big deal. So don't worry about that shit. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the first topic, and I'm gonna use an old Goldie classic. Let's see. Let's use our... I'm sure I have some MIDI shit, right? Fainter. Jamal. Man, I got so many windows open. Alright, so here is that MIDI thing that I did ages ago. Let's just listen to it for a second because I got to remind myself of what this is. I remember. Already remember. Gotta turn this shit down. A-bomb. What's up, Kevin? So much, but anyway, I do remember this now. So if this was like a track and I was done with it, well, first of all, I would make sure with any track that the top is faded in. Remember, I'm gonna make sure I tell you guys everything I'm doing. So if this was the track, you know, I would go to the beginning by pressing the return button, right? And I would zoom in by pressing the letter T, and I would make sure that all the tracks have like a nice fade in and fade out. I would do that for all of them, really. But anyway, let's not get into all that shit. I do want to make sure that the end is pretty tight. Yeah, so that's too long, right? By the way, when you put your cursor... So if this is a clip, this is an audio clip. If you put your cursor like this anywhere on a clip and you press the letter S, it will delete everything to the right of the clip. 1 second. Hey, Nash, we're on YouTube and I just sent the link. So I just wanted to clean that up. And I believe I'll clean this up too. So I would actually just make sure we don't have any extra shit tagged along. Now, if you want to select the entire range of the session, you go up here. There's a little line, like right here where my mouse is, right? This little gap. If you click on there once, it actually selects the entire session. So instead of having to like select all of them like this, you can just click here once and it selects the entire session, right? Now, if you double click on that region, it selects the entire session and the entire timeline, right? So you can see that it starts at the very beginning and it ends at the very last clip. All right, over here. You see how it goes all the way to the end? So that's one way to make sure that you've selected the correct length for the track. Another way to do it is just by manually doing it, obviously. If you just say like, okay, this is the very last instrument, so you can just select this whole thing, but you got to be pretty accurate. See how I'm like kind of off, right? You would select it and just drag it all the way to the beginning. A shortcut to do that is if you zoom in, put your cursor here. Remember that when you press return, it goes to the beginning of the session, but if I hold shift while pressing return, it actually selects the entire region from the beginning to wherever the cursor was at, right? Now, here's the one thing. The reason why I select things before I bounce it, you can bounce it without selecting, but the problem is if you had like some random automation here, right? And suppose you had hid the lane and you forgot about it. If you bounce it now, there's a chance that Pro Tools will bounce the entire thing, including this automation. So it would go from here all the way back. And artists fucking hate it when you send them their song and there's like 2 minutes gap. Like it's just ridiculous. It just doesn't show that you know what you're doing. So that's why I always make sure that I select the region before I actually bounce it. So that's a pro tip right there. Always select the region before you bounce it. Next thing, make sure your click track is muted whenever you bounce it, because unlike most DAWs, if this click track is not muted, it will actually appear in the bounce, and you will look like a total jackass if you send your artist their track with a click track on it. It's not a good look at all. What's up, Nash? I actually have got to put you for it. There we go. So very, very important. So let's do both of those things. Let's select our region, make sure things muted. Cool. Now go to File. How do you stay motivated to do stuff? Well, you you just keep going. It's fun. I don't know. It's fun stuff, and I love it. I enjoy it, and I would rather do this than work at a 9 to 5. Or rather, work at any other 9 to 5. I want this to be my 9 to 9, if you will. Did I get? I'm all tripping over my words. Did I ever tell you guys that before I started doing this whole audio thing, I went to a meeting for Aflac, the insurance company, like the duck and everything. I remember I needed money, man. I was like, man, let me just get like a good paying job, you know. It'll probably eat up a lot of time, but in my extra time I'll do music and stuff. So I went for this interview for Aflac Insurance. And the suit, the tie, shirt, pants, belt, and like as I was sitting there, like, and I was looking at everybody with a suit, and they were talking about, I don't know what they were talking about. It was like a group interview. They were talking about like, they were showing me some presentation about how to, you know, sell insurance or whatever, and like the whole time I'm looking at everybody and like my pants are fucking tight as this belt. I told you guys I don't like watches. I don't like none of that shit. I'll wear a belt now, but that's because, you know, I gotta keep that on. But like, I was looking around and I was like, man, I can picture you as a salesman. Oh no, I'm bad. Anyway, I was looking around the whole time and I'm like, man, what the fuck? Is this why I came to New York? Man, fuck this shit. I'll figure it out. And like, I'll just, we took a 5-minute break. I fucking left, man. I was like, I'm not going back. Fuck that. And I just, fuck it, you know? Like, you guys already know the story, sleeping on couches and all that shit. I just, whatever. First paid job I actually got was doing a podcast for Heritage Radio Network. I just edited podcasts. It was like $12 an hour or something, but that was my first time in the audio world. That's why I tell you guys, like, podcasts are a great way to get into it now that podcasts are so popular, right? But that being said, I do want to say that I was being unrealistic and I was kind of being, let's just say, romantic about the situation. Like, sometimes you need a solid 9 to 5 to hold your shit down and keep you financially okay, and then you got to just hustle the rest of the night, you know. So anyway, so now that you've highlighted the entire Pro Tools session, you go to File, you go to Bounce To, and then you go to Bounce to Disk. As you can see, the shortcut is Option Command B, right? I think on Windows it's Alt Command or Alt Control B. Control Alt B, yeah. So you click on that. Then this pulls up your bounce window, right? First and foremost, make sure that your bounce source is correct. By default, it should just be either the built-in output, which is whatever you're hearing on your headphones, or the playback engine output, which is the output of your Pro Tools sessions or your master fader, right? Very important. File type, we usually go with WAV. AIFF is another file type, which is very acceptable, but 90% of the people use WAV files. If you want to add an MP3, you can totally add an MP3 too. Next is one of the most important things. For some reason, people always forget about it or mess it up. Always select interleaved as your format. Okay, multiple mono means that it's going to spit out two files. It's going to spit out a left file and a right file. One for your left side speaker and one for your right side speaker. And, you know, that's completely useless. If you can't send that to an artist and be like, hey, listen to this. They're not going to import it into their DAW and no, just you want to send them one file, right? That's what interleaved is for. Mono summed, all it does is it takes the left channel and the right channel, adds them together, and creates a single mono track, but you don't want that either, right? Bit depth, 24-bit is good, 16-bit is fine. Don't do 32-bit. You know, the word is still out on that. Sample rate, 44.1 is if that's what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with film, it's most likely going to be 48. And if you're dealing with high-end classical jazz kind of music, it'll be either 48, 88.2, or 96. Extreme cases 192, but let's not go there. Right? Give it a proper name. You know, this is something that I want to make sure you guys know. Like, if you don't name your shit properly, it's going to look terrible to the artist. It's like he's going to think that you don't really give a shit. But even when you're doing assignments and stuff, just make sure you name shit properly so that it's just good presentation, good practice to get in your mind. So, like, for example, I would call this Bounce Project, and then I put my name, right? That it just looks official. It looks like you know what you're doing. I know this is the whole music industry. We're here to, like, you know, have fun, and, you know, we want to keep it fun and exciting, but there's also a professional side to it. And if you want to make money and make a career out of it, you got to have both, really. Right? Next, you can choose where you want the bounce file to go, but by default, it will go to the bounced files folder, right? You guys should know what that is. Let me pull that up, right? It should go to this folder by default, and that's what it says over here. Make sure offline is checked, and you go ahead and bounce it. This thing will pop up if you said add MP3, and this is pretty standard. Fastest and 128 is fine. If the artist has different requirements, like 320 kilobits per second, then you would want to change it to that. And whenever it's 320, I actually go for highest quality, which is like the slower render. But for now, fastest 128 is fine. All right, then you hit OK, and it bounces. And that's it. That's how to bounce. Very, very easy. Here it is in your bounced files folder, right? The WAV, the MP3, correct name. And the last thing, and this is probably something I should always mention, but I keep forgetting, but after you bounce something, just like take 2 seconds, press the space bar and listen to it, right? Just skim through it. You can't hear it, but I can. Just make sure it sounds exactly what you want to send. Like, you could have done everything correctly, but maybe you forgot one thing, and that shows up in the bounce. The bounced file, this file is what you're going to send to the artist, this or the MP3. So you want to make sure that sounds good. All right, so always check that before you do anything. All right, and that's basically the process of bouncing. I got bored from 9 to 5. Yeah, but that's the thing, right, Victoria? It's like the money is good, and you need money to not only live, but you need money to also not stress about money, and not stress about food, and not stress about all the other things. And when, at least for me personally, I think everybody's got to figure this shit out on their own. For the first, like, 6 years I was here, from like 22 to 28, 27, it was like, I didn't care about, not having enough food, even though I was fat as fuck. I didn't care about that. I didn't care about where I slept. I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted to hustle, get my skills up, make it in, figure out how to make it, blah, blah, blah. But eventually, I think as you get older, you're like, it'd be nice to have a bed to sleep on, or it'd be nice to, like, have more than one plate, I remember, like, I dated this girl. She bought me plates as one of her gifts because, like, I had one plate. My excuse was, it's only me eating, so what the fuck's the problem, right? So, it's not a bad idea to have a 9 to 5 just to hold the shit down and just get you one side of life settled. Because if you're stressing about that, it's very hard to be creative, very hard to just be on the fly, and, like, when somebody says, hey, can you come over here, and you just say yes. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to think about bills or shit. I've taken care of. Yes, let's go make a record, right? And obviously the ideal situation, which I don't know, I think I kind of hit after a long time, is that you want to have a 9 to 5 that you love, that's related to audio, right? Which is what I do. And then you want to do everything that you passionate about project-wise, like, beats, music, networking, all that shit. You want to be able to do that outside of that. So that's the goal, right? I'm in a very fortunate position that I got that, but I think everybody can get to it. She was rod for that. Not sure what rod means. She was rod for that. Not sure if that's some weird thing. Oh no, she was very nice about it. Yeah, I didn't think about it at the time. I was like, what? I eat off a plate. Why do I need more than one plate? And she's like, you're a fucking idiot. Oh, she ride or die. I didn't know that was rod. Rod is ride or die? I didn't know that. Well, we broke up, so I don't think she was ride or die. But that was also a while ago. All right, so that's how to bounce, right? Hopefully that all made sense. Okay, let's go to subgroup. Let's go to subgrouping, right? Enough about my dating life. Oh shit. Okay. Let me just go ahead and close this session. Alright, let's get into subgrouping. I'm gonna open up a different one for that. But that makes sense, right? How to bounce? No other questions on that, hopefully. Okay, what's going on? My thing is really slow. Let me just eject this for a second. Yeah, so the biggest thing about bouncing is that you select the area that you want to bounce. You bounce it properly in the correct format, right? And then you actually check the bounce, because you have to make sure that whatever you're going to send to this artist is actually what you intend to send. There's been a couple of times where, like, you bounce something and then you send it without listening, and you forgot to, like, mute one of the tracks or something, or, like, there's an intro, or, like, there's, like, a 10-second. I remember I got fucking cursed out because, like, there was a mastering thing that we had to do, and there was there was a 2 second gap of silence at the top of the song. Unacceptable. It's like the owner came up to me and he was. I just brought popcorn and soda. You crazy. So yeah, there was 2 seconds of silence on the top of the song, and we sent it to the artist, and the owner came up to me and was like, "Hey man, you fucked up," and I'm like, "What? The master sounded good," and he's like, "No man, there was 2 seconds of silence at the beginning of the song. You can't do that. Artists don't like that shit, man. They just want to hear it properly. They don't want to hear your fuck ups." So I know, like that might have seemed kind of super anal, but this is the work that goes into it. All right, let's go ahead and open up a different session. Subgrouping. I might just go ahead and open up a brand new session. Why is my shit so slow? What's going on? Sorry guys, what the hell's going on? Shit is so kind of bugging out right now. Come on. I gotta get a new MacBook. This thing's been with me for a while, but it might be time to upgrade. I fucking hate when I have to pause like this, because it's so fucking annoying and like, fuck. Alright, let's just do subgrouping. PT. You guys know how to create a session now, so I'm not going to go over that shit. Save it in the same place I always save it. Alright. Don't need any of this. Alright, let's just go ahead and import a file, right? Import some sort of file. You know what? Let's do this one. I haven't heard this in a while. Add it to a new track. Alright, so subgrouping, right? Look, this is just. Nah, man. This is just a random song, right? Right? Just random song. Now, here's the thing. This is on a stereo track right now, okay? This is a stereo track. You can tell because there are 2 meters over here. There's an output to a stereo output. You can tell all that stuff, right? Now, here's the thing. Suppose I wanted to send this or output this to a subgroup. Imagine I created an aux track, right? A stereo aux, okay? Just call it instrument group, right? Suppose I wanted to subgroup this into this, right? I think a lot of you got confused when I said subgrouping because it's not the same as grouping, right? Grouping is something else. Grouping is where you select multiple tracks and then you put them all in a group to edit or to move the faders together. Subgrouping is completely different, right? And it's based on the concept of busing. So if I wanted to output this to the subgroup, what I would do is, on the aux track, I would first make sure that it's solo saved. So I press Command and click on the solo button. Then I would select the input to a random bus. Doesn't matter what bus is it. Let's say bus 1920, right? And then I would output whatever track I wanted to subgroup to that bus. So select the output, go to bus 1920, boom. Now these two tracks are connected. This track is being outputted to this aux. In fact, it might even look clearer here, right? The signal comes down this track, goes to the output, and then it comes here, right? And by the way, Avery, if you're listening, this is post fader. So this does not have a pre-fader option. This type of subgrouping has no pre-fader option. This is post, right? So any fader movements that I make here will be reflected in the group, right? So when I press play, all right, and then when I turn it up, the entire signal goes to the group. It's just the entire signal going to the group. And you would do that if you had like 5 vocals, you would create a subgroup, and then you would output all of them to that subgroup. And I'm going to do that in the mix in the second half, and that'll make more sense, right? But this is basically using buses. Buses they're just used to connect one track to another, right? Just send audio from one place to another. Okay. Dual mono. Well, we don't really use that, but stereo. Okay, mono, first of all, just means single, and it just means single channel. So if you're recording a vocal, that is a mono track, right? It's one voice, one microphone, one channel. That's it, right? If you're recording piano, you might have like a low microphone and a high microphone. So that's 2 microphones, hence stereo. So it's a stereo signal, right? Dual mono basically refers to oh, hold on. Dual mono. Huh, actually I gotta check that out. Make sure I'm gonna say the right thing. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's it. So mono is just one channel, right? So here's the thing. When you listen to this track is a stereo track, right? And why is it stereo? Because you can hear things on the right and the left. And it's kind of like the image that's created between the two, right? Right? You can see here, hi-hats kind of spread across. Everything's kind of spread across a stereo, like a sound stage, right? Think of it as a stage. You have a left and a right, and it's kind of spread across that. That's a stereo image, right? But mono just means a single channel. And the reason why we hear mono in both speakers is because that signal is being sent to both speakers at the exact same time with the exact same amplitude, and our brains are like, oh, this must be dead center. That's why we think of it as mono, right? It's kind of fascinating. Like when you listen to speakers, right? When you listen to vocals, why are the vocals dead center? Like there's no speaker there, but it's there, right? Your speakers are here, but your vocals appear in between them. Like there's no speaker there. What's happening is that the vocals are actually coming out of both speakers at the exact same amplitude. It's hitting your ears at the exact same time, and your brain's like, oh, this is center. It's got localization and all to deal with. Now, dual mono is slightly different, and it's very rare that you'll come across this, but like sometimes you'll receive a file where it looks like a stereo file because there's 2 channels, right? But it's actually 2 separate mono files just condensed down into a stereo file, if that makes sense. Okay, so that might be a little confusing. Right. So let's take an example. Let's see. Let's find an example for dual mono. Let's do that counting shit. Intro to Pro Tools. Pro Tools again, bruh. I think that was it. Nope. That was. Oh, you guys. Sorry about this. Up to my knees, feeling you. I gotta give you some of that. It's a great voice. All right. Let's see. Audio recording. Here we go. 2 separate, unrelated. Yeah. Well. Yeah. I don't want to say unrelated, but they don't create what's called a stereo image, right? So let me get rid of all this shit. Remember this counting thing, right? I'm just gonna take another take of this. Let's say over here. All right. So here's the thing. What you heard before was stereo. It was a track, right? It had like a stereo image per se. Like there's stuff that's kind of spread across the left and the right. And that's totally stereo, right? Now here's the thing. Sometimes, and this is rare, you will receive a track like this, right? So technically, you could call this a stereo track because it's basically two channels, right? There's a left and a right. But you can hear 1, yeah, 2, 3, 4, 3, 5, 6, 4, 7. Right? You can hear that they're completely unrelated or not even unrelated. They're supposed to be two separate tracks. So that's the way you could distinguish it. If that makes, hopefully that makes sense. Two separate, it's actually, you know what, Jamal, that's not a bad way of putting it. Two totally unrelated tracks when they're kind of put together, unless it's some weird art piece, it's probably dual mono, right? And just as a heads up, if you ever receive something like that in Pro Tools where it's like dual mono, very rarely you'll get it. If you just right click on the stereo track, you can actually split it into mono. So check it out. So you see how now there's a stereo dot left and a stereo dot right, and it's separated out the two channels. So it's very useful to know. That's actually not bad that you brought that up. How do you know to change stereo track into... Okay, well, I think I just showed you. There you go. Right there. A stereo track into two mono... Well, a stereo track breaks down to two mono tracks, right? Because stereo is two channel. Only one mono... Well, if there's two different signals, you want to take both of them separately and put them each on a mono track. So they're both on a mono track, if that makes sense. You wouldn't want to put them on the same mono track. That doesn't make sense. If they're totally unrelated, you don't want to put them both on a mono track. You put them on two separate mono tracks, which is why it's called dual mono, if that makes sense. Cool. All right. So, might as well stick with this session while we're here. Suppose I have... Let's see. I have all these... All right, so I have 3 tracks right here, right? 3 tracks. Suppose they were like different vocals that they were all part of a song. And if I wanted to subgroup these, I would do the exact same thing that I did in the other video, right? I would create a stereo aux track, right? Stereo aux input. Samples is fine, right? I would call it a proper name like vocal group. I would solo safe it, right? I would set the input to some bus, say bus 9 and 10, and then I would output these to bus 9 and 10, right? Not send, output. Remember, output means you're sending the entire signal. Send means you're sending a copy of the signal, all right? Very, very, very important distinction. But now, all of these 3 are subgrouped to this group. Very important. You can EQ the entire group, you can compress the entire group, you can automate the entire group. It's very, very, very useful. You can change the fader levels of the entire group. Please remember how to do this. Subgrouping is extremely, extremely important. All right? And it's all done through buses. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, right? Remember, sends, these sends, they send copies of the file. Output just sends the entire signal that way, right? So if you imagine a signal coming through a track, output means, okay, where do I go? Okay, I'll go there. Whereas if you imagine the same signal coming down a track, a send means, okay, I'm going to take a copy and go this way, and then the output's going to go another way, right? That's the hugest difference you have to remember. Very, 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 very important. You know what we should do? We should like cut out... You say we, but maybe it should be like, maybe I should hire somebody for this. But we should cut out all the parts where there's actually, condensed information and put that into one video, because I feel like these videos are longer than they need to be. Does that make sense? Like the Audient video that I made, it was like super condensed down. I try to do that, but obviously I don't have enough time to do all the videos. That could be cool though. All right. Subgrouping. Hopefully that made sense. Very, very, very important. Very important. All right. Let's go on to Francis. Are you saying yes to you understood, or are you saying yes to yes, we should condense these videos down? Because I would agree with both of those. But that would take a lot of just not even because of any reason. It's just that whenever you want to refer to something, it'd be good to just have the snippet, right? Anyway, let's go to, well, Francis, do you want to hire somebody for $20 an hour and have them cut out all the good stuff? Oh my god. Let's see. Let's choose, let's go back to our thing. Don't worry. Think of it as an investment, bro. Oh, $20 an hour? Fuck that. Not paying that. Hey, do you actually do video editing? That's actually good to know. I might, just in case I know people. Put time marks. That's funny. You mean, timestamps. I thought you meant like give me marks for shit that I do. No, I've never paid. Okay. Don't say. No, I don't think I can't really put that in my budget right now, to paying somebody $20 an hour to edit these videos. I already spend stuff on like the guy who does my Instagram videos, so nice. It's good. Video editing is good to have. In fact, I told you guys about the Aflac story, right? So when so there was a point where like I was like, fuck man, I need some money, but it was bad. So like there was a girl at the radio station whose dad worked for this corporate company who needed a video editor. And I would edit all her podcasts, so she recommended me to her dad, saying like, hey, he's good at audio editing, I bet you he'd be good at video editing. And I was like, yeah, totally, I could totally do that shit. And I learned Premiere Pro for a bit, and I went there, bro. Like corporate fucking pays. Like I think I did like a video in like 3 hours, and it was like they paid me like $400. It's like, damn, that's fucking amazing. So, yeah, video editing very much helps. All right, so let's go on to this thing called Melodyne, right? So you already know about Auto-Tune, I assume. Auto-Tune is basically a program that pushes all the notes to the right key, right? And then you can also use it as an effect to make the notes do very crazy things, or the voice do really crazy things. You can change tuning speeds and all kinds of cool stuff, right? And that really works for a lot of genres, but there's some genres where it just sounds super unnatural if you put autotune on top of it. It sounds very stiff, and that's not really what we're going for. So there is another software that's been around for a while called Melodyne, and it's like autotune, but it's like manual tune. So instead of autotune, it's manual tune, because you have to do it yourself. But it's an extremely good tool, and it sounds super clean, very, very natural. Highly recommended. Even just the basic version, which is what I've been using for the last 8 years, it's just great. I would highly recommend it. So let's just take our beloved song. Let's just take a random section of this song.
Mama, mama, so I...
All right, so the so is out of key, right? Listen to this.
Mama, so I...
It's like a little flat. So what I could do is I'd go to my inserts. Remember, inserts are where you add plugins. Go to plugin. Go to let's see. Here it is. It's by a company called Celemony, and it's called Melodyne, right? I use Melodyne almost exclusively for vocals because it sounds so clean on vocals. I don't use it on many other instruments. Melodies? I think you meant Melodyne. It's called Melodyne. It can be used for chords as well, like instruments. But I use it specifically to tune vocals, right? So here's how it works. You open up the plugin and you see this kind of piano roll thing show up, right? No, there isn't one that comes with Pro Tools. And the pitch shifting in Pro Tools, just a heads up, is pretty bad. You have to buy Auto-Tune or Waves Tune or something like that. I wouldn't recommend using Pro Tools for pitch shifting. Yeah, you'd have to buy one of these, right? So, what you do is you open up the plugin. You have to hit the transfer button because first you have to transfer the audio into Melodyne. So you hit play.
Mama, so
right? And when you transfer it, it actually shows up in the plugin as almost like MIDI in a way. It looks like MIDI, but it's not really, right? And look, when you press play, you can hear that it plays exactly what I recorded.
Mama, so
So you can see where he's kind of flat, he's kind of on, he's kind of off. There's a couple of ways to do it, right? You can select the whole thing and just like snap him to key, but the way I usually like to do it is like I go note by note and make sure that like whatever note is off, I fix. If it's off by a little and it's not really that big a deal, I'll leave alone. You want it to sound as natural as possible in certain genres, like folk, acoustic, this kind of R&B is like, it's got to be natural. You can't just auto-tune it to death, right? Right, so you can change all that.
So Mama,
See, that's flat now.
Mama,
That's too sharp now. And you can see that it says the note and how many cents it's on, but don't follow this because that's not accurate.
Mama, so
And the cool thing about Melodyne is you can also split. So you see how this I is actually like two things. It's an I. You can actually split it by just hovering over it. When this thing appears, you can double click and it splits.
Mama, so
Right? And you can even change it, but it's going to sound really weird.
Mama, so
Right?
Mama, so
Right? So it can sound weird if you do it too extreme, but it's really good. It's really good for like the fine tuning, really.
Mama, so
See, even that last one is like flat to me.
Mama, so
Right? Better. Maybe turn that down a little. And there you go. That's how you tune. Now, the only issue with Melodyne is that when you install Melodyne and you transfer the vocals to the plugin, that's where the track is going to read it all the time. And that might not make sense right now, but if I delete this, check this out.
Mama, so
You see how the clip is gone, but it's still reading from this, right? So that becomes a problem. Like, suppose you wanted to edit something out like this, and you wanted to like maybe cut out that one word. You can't do that because it's going to read from the plugin.
Mama, so
Right? So that's kind of a downside of Melodyne, but obviously there's a way to work around that. And one way is the freeze method. All right. So basically, when you have a bunch of plugins on Pro Tools, it can eat up a lot of processing power. And so there's certain ways that you can almost alleviate some of that heavy processing. And one way is actually using the freeze method. So if you right click on any plugin, right, you can freeze all the plugins up to that plugin, or freeze up to that insert. So if I freeze this, right, what's happening is it's keeping the effects of Melodyne on there.
My mind. So
right? If you can't hear that, I'll take off another one, right? So I'll freeze here. I'll freeze this. And I'll freeze the next one too, right? So check it out. It's going to sound exactly the same.
my mind. So
Right? Kind of cool. What's happening is that Pro Tools has freed up a bunch of processing that these plugins do just so that you can run the session a lot smoother. It's very, very useful. Again, it's funny because the downside of this is also the same thing where you can't actually edit these, right? Because, well, it's kind of frozen, so you can't really do that. It's kind of locked into the processing that you've already given it, so it's not going to be able to let you edit stuff. So, that being said, what I will do is, oh, by the way, if you want to know if a track is frozen or not, you can see at the bottom there's like a little snowflake, right? And I'm just going to take it off there. Oh. I put it back on, but take it off for now, right? And then if you wanted to edit something, blah, 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 take that out. And then you could hit the render button again or the freeze button again. Right? And it keeps the edit. But what I like to do, personally, is that if I know that this is the tuning, that I've tuned the track exactly the way I want it, I will right-click on Melodyne, and instead of freezing it, I will commit. And what's going to happen is Pro Tools is going to render the entire audio track through Melodyne, making all the changes that I actually made, and then print a new audio track with the effects on it. So check this out. And it's going to put it on a new audio track. Very important. So here's what's happening. I'm going to commit the track. Right, I'm going to copy everything. And the original track with the 3 plugins is going to be made hidden and made inactive. So check it out. There you go.
my mind. So
Right, so it's in tune. We're not using Melodyne because we've committed the tracks. And worst case, if you're like, fuck, I need to go back, it's actually here in your track list. You'll see that there is a hidden file or a hidden track. You just click on the dot to make it reappear, and there it is. There's the old one. Anything with a .cm on it means that it's been committed. And look, you can do this for one plugin. You can also right-click and do it for the entire track, right? There we go, commit. And then again, press the same thing. Boom, it'll be .cm, yep. So now there's no plugins on it, but it sounds exactly the same.
my mind. So I guess the thought of
Right, sounds exactly the same because all the plugins I had on it were rendered and a new track was made with the effects printed on. And if I need to go back, they're already there in the hidden tracks, right? All right, let's see. Is there an auto-tune? No, I already answered that. Do you have to install it? I have Melodyne Essentials from the latest Pro Tools update. Oh, there you go. Maybe Melodyne Essentials comes with Pro Tools now. That's amazing. Do you have to pull up, enable the freeze option by accessing advanced options like Logic, or do you have to adjust the header size to see it? Or just have to adjust the header size? I don't know if I adjusted the header size. Oh, maybe you mean this. Like when you, yeah, if you have it really small, you can't see it. But once you see the little snowflake, yes, you can. You don't have to set on any advanced settings. This comes out of the package like this. Yeah, so freezing and committing, they should be right out of the package. You should be able to do it at any point. And it's very, very, very useful stuff. Yeah, so far okay? Nice. All right. So next, I want to show you what I've got going on here. So I have a vocal, right? I have a copy of the vocals being sent to bus 1 and 2. A copy, that means we got the vocal and then a copy being sent somewhere. Where is it being sent? It's being sent to Vox Verb, the reverb. You can tell because the input is bus 1 and 2. And I'm outputting both the reverb and the vocals to a vocal aux. Or we'll call it a vocal group, right? So this is subgrouping right here. These two tracks are going to this vocal group. All right? Very important. Subgrouping. Can't stress that enough. All right. Now, here's the thing. This is what I want to talk about, pre-fader and post-fader stuff. I'm sending a copy of the vocal to the reverb, but I'm sending it post-fader. So what does that mean? That means that whatever I'm sending to the reverb is affected by this fader and this fader. Okay? It's kind of like the sum of both of those is affecting it. So check it out. If I turn all this fader down, you're not going to hear any reverb, right?
So I guess the thought of you's just fine.
No reverb. Until you turn this fader up, you're only going to hear reverb then.
So I...
Right? You guys already know that. To save your computer CPU. Yes, exactly. Freezing and committing is especially for when you want to save CPU processing. I use it especially when I use things like Melodyne, Autotune, which is a very heavy plugin. Although, for the type of music that you guys are probably into, it's not recommended to do that because Melodyne actually has to work in real time. Anyway, I'm sorry, Autotune has to work in real time. I use it for heavy plugins like, certain compressors I use are very heavy. Certain reverbs I use are very heavy, so I'll commit those sometimes and just go with it. Right? That frees up so much processing, and then I can just work way smoother. So, when we're talking post-fader, it's everything is affected by this fader. So if I turn this fader down, you're not going to hear anything, right? Nothing. Post-fader, right? It's after this fader. But if I flip this to pre-fader, what happens is the copy of the signal gets sent to the bus before this fader. It's pre-fader. Pre-large fader, if you will. It's pre-large fader or pre-long fader. So when I hit play, you're going to hear the reverb. Right? So that's pre-fader. So pre-fader means it's being sent before this fader gets to affect it. Post-fader means it's being sent after this fader affects it. Very important distinction. Now the question is, when do you want to use one? When do you want to use the other? That's really, really based on the situation. And me personally, I use post-fader most of the time for reverbs, right? So I want to dial it in. I'll do something like that.
So I guess the thought of you.
Right, I'll dial it in with post-fader. But if there's a certain part of the song where I just want to have like a really spacey vocal, like let's take one of those breaks, right?
I shouldn't speak so loud. No.
Like maybe that should be like super delayed. And in that case, or super reverbed out. If I want something very reverbed out and in the background, I'll set it to pre-delay. I'll turn the post-fader way down so that you hear much more of just the reverb. So I do something like this. Right? Just sounds really cool to me. So here's what I'm going to do just to clear it up even more. I'm going to have one track with post-fader, and I'm going to create a duplicate track, and I'm going to set that to pre-fader. All right? Let me turn this one down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the second track down because we're going pre-fader. And then I'm going to take that one section that I like and bring it down to the pre-fader track.
Never said
Right, so check this out. I'm gonna turn this reverb down a little bit.
never said guarantee. I shouldn't speak so loud. And I
Do you know what I mean? I kind of like that.
say what you won't do for me, then force me not to run.
Right, kind of dry, a little bit of reverb.
I can't give you what you need, but I can give you what
And this
you
is all
want right
post
now.
fader. Post fader.
Never said guarantee. I shouldn't speak so loud. And
Pre fader. So pre fader just gives you that sense of like things are much more reverberated out. But the concept is pre fader just means before this long fader. That's all it means. Avery, does that make sense? It's kind of a cool trick. Hopefully you got that. Hopefully you got something out of that. Pre-fader is also used primarily on consoles. Whenever you're working on a console and you need to send the artist a mix to their headphones, you always, or even if you're not on a console, if you're on Pro Tools and you want to send the artist a mix, like for them to hear while they're performing, always send pre-fader. It should be obvious why, but if you send stuff post-fader to the artist while he's performing, and then if you're starting here fucking around with all this shit, he's going to hear all the changes because you've sent it post-fader. So whenever you're dealing with headphone mixes, send it pre-fader. Headphone mixes are always pre-fader. Francis, timestamp that shit. Alright. Yo, that's yeah. It's not a, I mean, if I had enough money, I would actually pay somebody to cut out all the good stuff. I would actually probably hire the guy I use on Instagram because that's my boy right there. And he's good. But money, money, money. Alright. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is, you guys should know how to do this, but how to view the automation, right? There's already a whole video on automation there, but I'm just going to go over. Look, if you want to see any of the automation that you have, you go to the bottom left of the track over here. There's a little arrow. You click on the arrow. That opens up what's called the automation lane, right? And you can see that by default it's set to volume. And by volume, I mean this fader right here, right? So that means when you change shit on the volume, it's going to change shit on the fader, right? You guys know all this already. If you want to change it, you flip it from volume to mute, right? If you want to do mute, you could do that. So when you do this, here's what happens. You can see that the mute button will be highlighted. Boom, right? And I didn't click on that, by the way. Right? Automation. And you can change it to whatever parameters you want to automate. Or the send, if you want to change the send, right? If you want to make a send more strong over here, you would do that. So watch this fader.
what you want right now. Never said guarantee.
See how it's going up?
I shouldn't speak
There you go. I'll do it faster just to be sure that you got it.
right now. Never said guarantee.
Right? And if you want to add some parameter to this list, what you have to do is, suppose you want to add like some plugin, EQ7, right? If you wanted to add maybe this parameter to it, what you would do is press Control, Option, Command, click on the gain, enable automation, right? Then you'll see a little green dot below the parameter. You can see it right there. That means it's ready to be automated, but now it'll also show up in your list right over here, right? And then when you fuck around with that, boom, 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 boom. What's that song?
What you need, but I
Right.
can give you what you want right now.
So it's just following.
Never said guarantee. I shouldn't speak so loud.
There you go. And that's it. That is automation in a fucking nutshell. Cool? Cool. So those are basically all the topics that I wanted to cover. Just make sure, is there anything you want me to cover before I mix something in the second half? Let me know. Because I'm here right now with Pro Tools and I can do it. I'm gonna assume no. Don't seem to be getting any questions. All right, so let's take it back to Zoom then.